No, it's gonna be. We're almost at the end, but there's still a little bit left. I heard a story from Tzvi Arya Rosenfeld, Schmooze, who we've spoken about a good amount of times at this point. Reb Nassim, when he traveled to Eretz Yisrael, when he got to Sfas, he was very happy because he had the opportunity to share Rabbi Nachman's Torahs. Now, we know Sfas to be one of the holy cities in the world. Oh, hey.
Hey, sorry late.
Actually, right on time. We just started.
Beautiful. Thanks for waiting for me.
Yeah. You missed the pre-schmooze. The pre-schmooze was good. It was like, it was pretty good. But that's on a recording. Ian will tell you all about it.
Oh dear.
So when Menassim went to Eretz Yisrael, he's in Sfas and he's excited because he's going to share Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Now, we know that Sfas is one of the, as we just said, is one of the holiest cities in the world, and people in Sfas, the tzaddikim in Sfas, were of the highest caliber. Now, if I were to ask you a question, hopefully the answer may or may not be obvious. Given the context of this year, it could be obvious. What Torah do you think Reb Nassim shared with the Tzedikei Sfas, the Ziknei Sfas? Which Torah from the Likutei Moharan did he share? Trivia question. What do you think?
Trying to remember
The Hebrew word?
Nekudas Tovos.
That's right.
But Badika, is that the word?
Nekudas Tovos, you're right.
To search.
To be Mavakesh. But the Torah itself is called a Zamra. A Zamra. I will sing with that which I have left, i.e., my good points. And this is the Torah that he's sharing with the greatest men of all time. Why would he need to do that if they're the greatest men of all time?
Because that means they're probably the hardest on themselves too.
So yeah, meaning even at every level, right? No matter if a person is on the lowest level, so to speak, or a person is on the highest level, so to speak, right? This teaching applies. And this teaching was so precious in Reb Nassim's eyes that it was the teaching he wanted to, right? He's going to tell everyone about Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Nachman's godless, so to speak, and this is the flagship teaching he's going to bring to them, which says so much about the power of this teaching, of this Torah, not to mention the fact that he began his entire 8-volume work of Likutei Halachos with this teaching, Zamra. So it was very, very precious in Reb Nassim's eyes, this Torah. This mice I heard from Tzvi Arya Rosenfeld, Schmooze Aleinu, who we spoke about in the past. We're holding here in the midst of, I think, Os Yud Beis, looking at Parshas HaChodesh, right? And the idea of how the process of the moon is representative as well of this process of finding good, the ebb and flow of the moon, right? The idea of exile and gullus, where a person, right, the moon is at its, right at the beginning of the month when there is, the beginnings of the shining of the moon, and that's when we're going to be Mekadesh the moon and say, Kodesh, Kodesh, or Kudosh, Kudosh, whatever we say, it's holy, it's holy. All you need is that little sliver to be able to say, right? This is Kodesh. And it's true for ourselves too. We don't need a whole lot. We need a little point of good. And this is, by the way, the first mitzvah that the Jewish people receive, leaving Yitzitz Yisrael as a people, to do Kiddush Levana. So on the deeper level, and the kavanah that we can have when we do Kiddush Levana, right? We know that missing Kiddush Levana is like severe. It's like a big deal to miss Kiddush Levana. Yol and bracha that no one should ever miss Kiddush Levana. I have in the past, and I feel bad about it. But B'ezrat Hashem, we should never miss Kiddush Levana. So the deeper reason behind why that is because this is representative of the Geula process of being Mabakish, the good. That's the avoda behind the scenes, so to speak, of Kiddush Levana, and it's the avoda of the Jewish people as we go through our historical process. Meaning, as we enter into the times of Mashiach, which is now, the key work for ourselves is to do this for ourselves and for others. I read today actually a Maisa from one of the tzaddikim, who I don't remember his name, but basically he went up to he was mistakel, he died, went up to Shemayim, and what he saw there was that in Shemayim they were so unhappy about the machlokas amongst the Jewish people and the hatred and the lashon hara and all the difficulties, the relational difficulties that people are being over on ben Adam Chavero. And this is what he brought down when he came back. He sent back to life, and this was the message that he was going to convey, that the ikar avoda at this time is Avos Yisrael. And this, of course, applies amongst friends, amongst spouses, right, in community.
If I understand correctly, Sinas Chinam and Lashon Hara are two of the 5 reasons we don't have the Beis Hamikdash right now.
Right.
But it's very interesting, what you just highlighted is how we're basically tethering ourselves to the waxing of the moon, because we know that it's going to wane again, but it's going to wax again. So
right.
that particular mitzvah and its significance, we're all representative of it. That we have to be a bar nofli. It doesn't matter how many times we wane, we're going to wax.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Wax on, wax off.
Yeah. I mean, we know, and that's, by the way, this is a separate point, but a lot of times we pathologize this process that we're bad because we have these ebb and flows. And it's actually very liberating on a psychological level when we stop pathologizing this process of waxing and waning, recognize it's just a part of the human experience, right? Rabbi Nachman talks about there's running and returning. There's times when we're spiritually soaring, and there's times when we're not. But to feel bad about the times that we're not, that's counterproductive. We don't have to, yeah.
Life is like a pendulum. Like, however far it swings out in one way, it swings out the other way. But, as a person, they say, as a person becomes more spiritually elevated, their Yetzer Hara also gets stronger. But
Correct.
They don't sin as much, generally speaking. Or, their Yetzer Hara changes. Someone before might have been, tempted by pornography, whereas now, maybe they get tempted by eating too much.
Right.
Or, the sin, obviously, one sin is much worse than the other. Or maybe, I don't know, they don't sin as much as they go up, right?
What we could say is that the...
So, the pendulum swings out one way, but doesn't swing as far back.
Well, it's a spectrum. When the Yetzer Hara can't get you on things you can't do, it starts to get you on things you can do. When it can't, and sometimes it'll even a little mess with your time. For example, so what you were describing, you stop doing something that you're not supposed to be doing completely. You figure out how to guard your eyes better. Well, it's going to make your thoughts clouded at a
Right.
time when you're supposed to be focusing or something like that. It's going to say, oh, you don't have kavanah right now. You're such a tzaddik, but you can't even daven properly. Or you'll start thinking about things you're supposed to think about. Oh, I should do this tzedakah. I should do that mitzvah. Wait a minute, I'm supposed to be davening right now.
Right. So
It finds new artillery.
the refinement of the test, if there's a refinement of the test, so maybe a person, right, reaches, right, it's like the death story talks about the nikuda of the battle, or where it is. So for tzaddik, his level of where the battle is at a much more refined place, so to speak, as opposed to maybe us, where it might be at a I'll speak for myself, at a lower level, right? But there's always going to be that battle, and then what we learn actually in the beginning of this Torah in Halacha Aleph here is the idea of doing tshuva upon tshuva, right? That the tzaddik, or really any of us, we had a certain perception of Hashem, and then as we grow, we are actually doing tshuva on that previous perception, because wow, that perception was so coarse and limited, and now I'm at a new madrega, and so. Right? There's always Joy Rosenfeld speaks about this idea, I think, oftentimes in the name of Rabbi Shemaiah Morgenstern,
Came to this.
where he says that that the ground floor of one level is the ceiling of the next level, right? Because Hashem is infinite. And by the way, in the series of shirim from Ratzvi Aryeh Rosenfeld regarding Shvach Yaran, the praises of Rabbi Nachman, he says that one of the unique qualities of Rabbeinu Zal was that he never stopped. He just never stopped growing because Hashem is infinite. So even he mentions, like remarkably so, that I'm speaking from just hearing this from the Shir, but my understanding is that the Arizal speaks about a particular level, a very high level that a person can achieve in Avodat Hashem, and it's sort of considered the apex. And Rav Aryeh Roosevelt says, he goes, not only did Rabbeinu Zal reach that level, he far surpassed that level, whatever that means. That he had kept going and going and going. He never stopped growing, and that even prior to him, the Masorah goes where once Rabbeinu Zal reached Eretz Yisrael, he says that he was ashamed of what he had accomplished prior to Eretz Yisrael, and already prior to Eretz Yisrael, he had achieved heights in Avodah Hashem that people we can't even begin to fathom. Like there's this concept in Avodah Hashem, or in the 24 courts in heaven, so to speak, and the tzaddik has, and there are different tikkunim depending upon which based in you're referring to in Shemaim, and then there's this sort of general pidyon that is mitakin all of the 24 base dinim, batei dinim, and Shemayim. And prior to Eretz Yisrael, Menachem had achieved this understanding of this general pidyon, not just this pidyon was good for this base din, etc., etc., etc. He already achieved, and there's one tzaddik in the generation who has this information, and that was prior to Eretz Yisrael. And then once he got to Eretz Yisrael, he said that I was ashamed of everything that he achieved. So you imagine that now that he had achieved his 4 steps in Eretz Yisrael,
How many years did Nachman go okay so before he passed?
I want to say, but I'm not sure, 26 years old,
And he passed away by
38 and a half, 39. So that just gives us a little bit of context around who we're talking about.
When I think of Rabbi Nachman, I think of an old man.
I know that's the funny thing. You think he was actually very young. But why were we saying this? I don't even remember. Oh, we're talking about. We're talking about that person's growth is infinite, and as they sort of go up the chain, the test becomes more and more refined. So, guys like us, we have a certain type of test, but then the tzaddik has, whatever the test the tzaddik has, I don't even know, but it's still a test, maybe.
Wait, so why was Rav Nachman buried in Ukraine? He died in Israel.
He didn't die in Israel.
He died in Uman.
So he just went to Israel?
Mm-hmm.
And then he came back.
Came back, yep.
How long was he in Israel?
Not so long, I think, relatively speaking.
Was the whole thing with the war?
Right, it's a whole story. It's a whole wild story. Same thing with Nassim, the whole wild story of how Rav Nassim got there. Yeah,
I don't know about that.
it's remarkable story, remarkable stories. Zot Hashem, Zoche to connect
You
with
need to make
Tzaddik
a minyan
Midim.
before midnight. There's no time for. I was delayed for other things also, but there's no time for the. We finish mincha 8:32.
Yeah,
To get here,
it's a tough time. Yeah, I was like, so I'm not sure what the answer is. Unless and we
Get a
could,
minion before.
we could get a minion before. I wasn't confident we'd get a minion before, but maybe we'll be zochet to a minion before. Baruch Hashem.